Hayling Island has been a popular seaside resort for well over a century. An international sailing centre, birthplace of windsurfing, it can claim some preeminence in waterborne activities. This was especially so in the latter part of World War II.
Leanne and Shannon, would you please unveil the seat as an act of commemoration?
When the Honourable Timothy Knatchbull unveiled this commemorative bench at the Copp Memorial in May 2014, he marked the final event honouring the brave men of Combined Operations pilotage parties who were based here in World War II. Copp, as they were known, were a top-secret reconnaissance unit whose daring exploits in the last war were crucial in safeguarding the lives of many thousands of Allied servicemen on invasion beaches throughout the world, most famously prior to D-Day in 1944. Timothy's grandfather, Lord Louis Mountbatten, was head of Combined Operations and had set up the small 200-strong specialist unit at the Hayling Island Sailing Club in late 1942. In turn, Lord Mountbatten's great-nephew, the Prince of Wales, was pleased to become the patron of the Copp Heroes Memorial Fund. When Robin Walton and Jim Booth first met His Royal Highness Prince of Wales, he was intrigued to hear about the Copp unit's exploits and suggested we should use granite from one of his former duchy estates to create the memorial. They were introduced to stonemason Ian Piper, and in late March set out on the first of many visits to the Birator stone quarry, which Ian's family have worked for generations. What they found was this wonderful hillside location, its rugged grandeur in marked contrast to the flat seaside charm of Hayling Island. They received a very warm welcome from their new Cornish friends and benefactors, and Ian Piper immediately took them up to view the piece of granite he'd selected for them, embedded deep in the side of the hill. Ian explained how he would go about extracting the massive block of stone from the hillside onto a flatter position to commence shaping and preparing it for the day when we would ship it back to Hayling. At first sight, it seemed that they had taken on quite a task, because as the man said, "Wow, that's a serious lump of rock." That's not a problem, they were told, and a date was set for them to return to view the operation to move it. They have a lot of weather up on the moors, and April the 5th dawned with the quarry feeling like something out of a classic novel, or the set of a Hammer horror film. Alex Piper and Peter Hooper set to work and swiftly dragged all 12 tons of granite out of its ancient resting place. To be honest, it was nothing like the gleaming pillar we have today on Hayling Common, but they were assured that all would be well, and shaping and cleaning was scheduled to start once they'd agreed the profile and the position of the Copp badge.
There was an actual line around there. We just had to fill in that.
As the work progressed, they started to consider how they would get the granite back to Hayling Island, and as it turned out, help was at hand just a few miles away. Former Coppist Jim Booth had shown great interest in the project since he and Robin Walton were both invited to meet Prince Charles early in 2011. He persuaded the general in charge of the Royal Engineers to help out, and the local regiment, Royal Engineers Commandos, agreed to transport the completed memorial centrepiece to its final location on Hayling. This was most appropriate, as the Royal Engineers, together with the Royal Navy, had made up the major proportion of the Copp unit in World War II. The sappers arrived in the quarry early on the 10th of July 2012, and we witnessed some true military skills at first hand. In no time at all, the memorial centrepiece was loaded onto the army transporter and was on its way. First the regimental base at Tiverton, then onto Marsh Plant headquarters in Havant, and the memorial site on Hayling Beachlands. True to tradition, the Hayling Sailing Club looked after the troops on the night of the 11th before the big lift and fix the following day. A fine Hayling day dawned, and the memorial stone arrived at its destination, with some serious work to be done on site in preparation for the unveiling on September the 27th. The Copp veterans and families all gathered at the Newtown House Hotel on the 26th to chat over old times and enjoy dinner together and pose for a group photograph. And then the big day arrived.
92.
Countess Mountbatten, CDS General Richards, General Davis, past and present members of the Special Boat Service, ladies and gentlemen, good morning and welcome to this very special occasion, the dedication of the Copp Memorial. My name is Wendy Adams-Evans and I'm sure you'll know my colleague, Anna Chancellor.
Hello, I'm very pleased to be here today and it's fantastic to see so many people. We're really here to welcome our band of brave Copp volunteers who are here with us today to honour their former comrades. John Ashford, John Ainsworth Davis, Jim Booth, John Bowden, Roger Gilbert, David Owen and Peter Palmer. Now there were 200 strapping young men in the Copps and just 4 were wrens, so you can imagine what it must have been like for those girls. Might have been rather exhausting. To open the proceedings, may I now introduce Chief of Defence Staff, General Sir David Richards.
Countess Mountbatten, ladies and gentlemen, and most importantly, Coppists, as I've grown to know you. Thank you, Wendy and Anna, for your very kind welcome. And thank you to Robin Walton and your small team for all your hard work in bringing us here together today. It's wonderful to be here to remember the brave men of the combined operations pilotage parties whose work did so much to guarantee our freedoms today. Set up in 1942, the Copp ran operations around the world to recce beaches and landing sites for the coming invasion of Europe and elsewhere. It was highly successful, as the landings in Italy and Normandy testify, and they saved countless lives. As an organisation, they were unique, taking risks in paddling miles from the relative safety of a ship or submarine to the dangers of enemy-occupied territory. In 2-man teams normally, they proved their courage time and time again. Their exploits at that time were rightly secret, but now can be remembered with great pride. What some would probably rather forget is the effort and training that success required. Daily swims in the harbour not far from here were led by the founder and inspirational commander, Lieutenant Commander Nigel Wilmot, while Lieutenant Jeff Galway established the base here on Hayling Island. And I should say this is something which Hayling Islanders should be very, very proud of. This is a unique part of the island's contribution to the Second World War effort. On operations, Major Scott Bowden, whose son I know very well, who serves, or just retired in fact from the army, and Sergeant Ogden Smith, who surveyed British and American landing sites in France, and Lieutenant Smith and Brand, who canoed from Sicily to Malta, demonstrated, and they're just examples, the strength of character and courage of these men. We're very lucky to have so many of them relatively with us here today, and I'll just repeat their names: John Ashford, John Ainsworth Davis, Jim Booth, John Bowden, Roger Gilbert, David Owen and Peter Palmer. But those days are far from over. Those days are far from over. The successors of the Coppists continue to serve with great gallantry and distinction around the world, and you'll hear a bit more about them later. Indeed, for 3 memorable years from my point of view, I was very proud to wear the same badge as you see here, the symbol of combined operations, which is worn by those at the Joint Force Headquarters and in certain other key roles. Combined operations have evolved greatly in the past 70 years, but the ethos that underpins them has remained constant. It remains a centre for excellence, for flair and innovation, and for pushing ourselves to the limits. I'm very proud to have served with men like the Coppists over my 40-year military career. I know how much difference leadership and personal courage can make to an operation. That is why I'm here today. I'm personally very grateful to those amongst us, but particularly for those who did not return. They sum the courage of that generation. I would now like to welcome, on behalf of everyone, and this is a huge pleasure to me, Countess Mountbatten, whose father, one of my distinguished predecessors, indeed the very first Chief of Defence Staff, was Chief of Combined Operations when the Copp was formed. Countess Mountbatten.
It's a really wonderful occasion to be here today, and all of you have some connection, even if it's only of friends or admiration, with the Coppists. And I don't know whether you realize quite what a marvelous thing it is that our Chief of the Defence Staff, General Sir David Richards, who has just been talking to us, is attending this relatively small, very important to us, but relatively small, but it shows what is thought of what happened when the Coppists were operating, and in fact still today what goes on in this way. So it's a real pleasure and a real coup that nothing happened too bad to keep you away from us. I think we were slightly worried, but it's really wonderful. We do thank you quite enormously. There are so many people to thank, and I can't really do the job. But Robin Walton has been the connection that I've had to come here, and I know that he has worked day and night, so to speak, for 3 years, and it's a wonderful to have had an idea, to work on it, and to make it actually happen. And here we have this absolutely marvelous, enormous piece of granite. And isn't it wonderful? It looks like half a canoe, if you look at it carefully. Couldn't be better. And that was a present to us, a present from, remind me? Ian Piper. Ian Piper. Of course I knew the name. Naturally, when you're nearly 90, you do forget these things. But I don't know, where is Ian Piper? Oh, there you are. Now, do stand up. I think that's, yes, absolutely. He comes from Cornwall, and he now has a granite quarry that was part of the duchy of Prince Philip's duchy, Prince Charles's duchy. And I know that in order to get it weighs 12,000 tons. That's right, isn't it, I think?
No.
It's worth about the same amount. But it was manhandled here by soldiers from the Royal Artillery and the Royal Engineers, who we are very much indebted to. It's lovely because it's sort of do-it-yourself memorial, isn't it? And all of you have been wonderful in backing it and contributing and doing what you can to help. And it's lovely to see so many young people, because we are talking about nearly 70 years ago. I of course do remember some of the Coppists, because I was a Wren in those days, which is nowadays you could join the Navy, but in those days you would join the Women's Royal Naval Service if you wanted to be a naval person. And I was serving down the coast a little bit at Southampton on the River Hamble, HMS Tormentor, which was an early combined operations base. And of course we were tremendous admirers of the commandos, and we looked after small landing craft, and we also had some Coppists, and the Coppists were very secret and nobody quite liked to sort of talk too much about them, but we were very aware that they were there. And it's something to be able to remember, to look back on. So I can't believe the weather. We're so lucky. We mustn't talk for too long, or we might not be lucky enough. But I would only say an enormous thank you to everybody who has contributed, whether they're related or friends or in a civilian way, or to do with Hayling Island. And it's a great feather in your caps to have achieved this. So thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to come along and be part of this very, very special little ceremony. Thank you.
Finally, I'd like to introduce to you a lovely man whom I've been privileged to meet on several occasions. Former Coppists, Jim Booth. Jim.
Well,
Lady Patricia, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I just feel like saying, follow that. Quite honestly, I had a lot to prepare, but what's happened in this day is quite spectacular. I think really I'm here mainly now to offer thanks to all my fellow survivors, I think we call ourselves, don't we? Everything that's been done this last few days, mainly this last weekend.
So that concludes the formalities. Please feel free to chat, take photographs, look at the military vehicles, and talk to the Coppists maybe about their experience. Thank you, every single one of you, for being here today and making this such a wonderful morning. And to the school, Hayling Island School. Hooray! Thanks for coming. Bye-bye.
2 years later, we celebrated D-Day, and I was pleased to play a part in that day's activities.
Okay, good morning everybody. What a wonderful day to be here. What a classic Solent day looking out on the sea today. And I noticed a tall ship sailing past. It fills my heart with pride as now a resident of Hampshire to be here, and also, of course, be here in this illustrious company as someone who loves history as much as I do, and of our local connection here with some of the most important events in history. We're here to talk today about, here to remember the Combined Operations Pilotage Parties, or Copp. Less than 200 men who did a hugely important job around the world and at D-Day. And why did you need to recce these beaches? Why do you have to get in there and actually test the sand, test the beaches that you're about to land on? And the answer is you had to do it because Britain had learned to its cost over the previous generations that unless you really checked where you're going to land, the results could be disastrous. Now, it was working out where and when it was appropriate to land on enemy beaches. You had to get it just right. They had the lesson reminded in Norway in 1940, when half of the British ships that were lost in Norway were lost hitting underwater obstacles, rocks and reefs and shoals that weren't on charts and that no one had properly recce'd. So it was very clear to many people that they needed a specialist unit that could go ashore and work out exactly where the most appropriate place to land was. It was established in 1942, just in time for the North Africa landings, Operation Torch, and they went very well. And basically it involved extremely brave men swimming ashore, having a look at the beach, surveying it, digging up samples, checking how firm the sand was, all that kind of thing. And often they'd get ashore and realise that the place where the planners wanted them to land was completely inappropriate. Things look very different when you're crawling around a Normandy beach in the middle of the night to what they look like back in Southwick House here in the comfort of Hampshire. Just briefly say, Sicily was one of the most impressive places where Copp operated in 1943. 3 men were lost there, for example, in very, very tough conditions. And one Copp unit discovered when they were going and recceing the attack on Syracuse the Copp unit discovered this previously unknown gun battery, which would have been disastrous if that had opened up on the attacking troops on the day of the amphibious assault. And again, in terrible weather, the Copp operatives guided the assaulting waves into the beaches in June 1943 on Sicily. But of course, we're mainly here to think about D-Day, because this is, in a couple of weeks' time, the 70th anniversary of that extraordinary day, the largest amphibious invasion in history. Probably we'll never see its like again. On New Year's Eve, 1943, Logan Scott Bowden, who has sadly just recently passed away, he and a colleague...
Wendy Adams Evans interviewed Scott Bowden for us shortly before his death in 2003.
Thank you for agreeing to meet us today. I'm really privileged to hear about your exploits on Hayling in World War II.
Well, I served in Special Forces in the Norwegian campaign. For that reason, Nigel was particularly pleased to accept me as his a senior soldier and member of the #1 reconnaissance team.
So, General, can you just talk us through the purpose of your mission to Gold Beach, please?
We were sent over on New Year's Eve to examine an isolated metre-square block of peat, which was there on the beach. And the probability was that if there was peat, there would be clay fairly near the surface, which would be highly dangerous to an invasion force. And so we made our way back, knowing it would be fairly safe because the Germans were having a New Year's Eve party, and they were an hour ahead in time on us. And we could hear they were very well on, and we didn't think we'd have any trouble from them. And so we carried out our examination and then set about getting out through the breakers, because the wind had risen to force 5. And we had some difficulty in getting out. And we did eventually break through. And Bruce Ogden Smith started yelling, and he was slightly behind me, and I swam back to him, and he was shouting, "Happy New Year." And I said, "Swim me, please, or we'll be back on the beach." And then I relented and wished him a Happy New Year too. And then we swam out and shone our directional torches towards where we hoped our recovery boat would be. And it seemed a little while before it fetched up, but suddenly it was there. And we were hauled in, first in a recovery boat, and then we got to the motor torpedo boat, which took us over, and were hauled into that, and then set off for home.
Now, I gather the Americans wanted you to do similar observations at Omaha Beach.
Yes. General Bradley, who was Commander-in-Chief of all the American invasion forces, having heard that we had examined the British beach, wanted Omaha Beach, as it came to be known, to be examined too. And by this time, our midget submarines had come down from Loch Striven to the inner harbour at Fort Blockhouse. Then we went over in one of those, being towed out a third of the way by an armed trawler, and then we were on our own and went on overnight, arriving just after dawn to find a French fishing fleet outside Omaha Beach with their nets out. Ken Hudsmith, who was the Australian in command of our boat, decided that we could get through underneath the net, but there was a German soldier in the bow of the boat with his greatcoat on and collar turned up and smoking a Bavarian pipe. And we didn't want to be seen by him. But we avoided that quite all right, and were then able to go ahead with our main reconnaissance of Omaha Beach, which took us, another 3 days.
So how long did you have to spend in the midget submarine?
Well, we spent the best part of 5 days.
Can you tell us what the conditions were like inside there?
Well, they were very smelly, to say the least, because we couldn't dispose of any gas. And so when we came in to Gosport, to the inner harbour, when we opened up, there was a slightly on-blowing breeze, and the reception committee to a very smart step backwards.
Dorothy, who will entertain you. Please welcome the Three Bells.
Hi, I'm Betty.
I'm Gail.
I'm Dorothy. And we're the Three Bells. And we're going to start with a song that we hope gets you in the mood this afternoon, and it's called
In the Mood. Mister, what you gonna, what you doing tonight? Hope you're in the mood because I'm feeling just right. How's about a corner with the table for two, where the music's mellow and some gay rendezvous? There's a chance of dancing with the blue attitude. You've got to listen, dancing to get in the mood. Sister, what you coming? That's a kindly idea. Something swing a doodle if you get to my ear. Everybody must agree that dancing has charm. When you got the certain, when you love and you're on. Stepping out with you will be a sweet interlude. I'll build her up and I will put me in the mood. In the mood. That's it, I got it. In the mood. You little spotted. In the mood. Alright, if I hit me alive and get the jive, we got to learn how. Hep, hep, hep. Hep like a heifer. Hep, hep, hep. High as a pepper. Step, step, step. Step like a stepper. We're bugging, we're hugging, we're in the mood now. Mister, what you calling? All you needed was fun. You can see the wonders that this evening has done. Your feet were so heavy till they hardly could move. Now the light is feathers in your eye and the groove.
Finally, we were absolutely delighted to welcome His Royal Highness Prince Charles to the memorial on the 1st of July this year, when he laid a wreath and met 4 surviving Coppists. Penny Payne set the scene beautifully, and Timothy Knatchbull spoke before the Prince laid a wreath and went on an extensive walkabout.
In the laying of a wreath to their memory, as patron of the project for the provision.
Your Royal Highness, Sir, Cousin Charles, respected godfather, patron of the Copp Heroes Memorial Fund. I think it was in 2010 that Robin Walton and Jim Booth came to see you. Somehow they managed to get half an hour in your diary. Robin and his committee, through incredible long hard work, were able to secure the really generous support of many extraordinary people and organisations that have obtained this amazing piece of granite, transported it from Cornwall, engraved it and erected it here on Hayling Island. And this island really has a very special place in history as home to one of the most remarkable, important, yet little known units of the Second World War. Set up on the instruction of Lord Mountbatten in 1941, these people did something that now stands in history. It was set up, as I mentioned, by Lord Mountbatten, the man you called, Sir, Uncle Dickie, for me, Grandpapa. How proud Grandpapa would be today that the bravery, the sacrifice, and the dedication of the men of Copp were being honoured and brought to the attention of a new generation in a way that will reach all future generations. Anyone in doubt of the absolutely unique contribution of these men to the world that we live in today should bear in mind this historic signal sent from the Chiefs of Staff from the landing beaches of D-Day in 1944 to Lord Mountbatten. By then, he had been sent by Churchill to be Supreme Allied Commander in Southeast Asia. This is that message from the Chiefs of Staff. Today, we visited the British and American armies on the soil of France. We sailed through vast fleets of ships with landing craft of many types, pouring more men, vehicles, and stores ashore. We saw clearly the manoeuvre in progress of rapid development. We have shared our secrets in common and helped each other all we could. We wish to tell you at this moment in your arduous campaign that we realise how much of this remarkable technique, and therefore the success of the venture, has its origin in developments effected by you and your staff of combined operations. Signed, Arnold, Brooke, Churchill, King, Marshall, Smuts. This is a very rare message in the long history of warfare, and it acts as testament to the unique contribution made by combined operations and its almost unbelievably brave men, typified by the pilotage parties, the men we now know and love as Coppists. How wonderful that we have 4 survivors here today, the VIPs above all others, and their families. We salute you and we thank you. The one man above all other who would like to be here would have been my dearly beloved grandfather, Lord Mountbatten. How proud he would be of the recognition being given to the Coppists today. His daughter, my mother Patricia, godmother to Prince Charles, has sent this message from her home in Kent. Her name is Countess Mountbatten of Burma, and many of you were here in 2012 to see her dedicate the memorial. It means a great deal to her, as she had personal knowledge of the Copps while serving as a Wren on the south coast in the Second World War. I wondered exactly what my mother meant when she said she had personal knowledge of the Coppists, but we better leave that. This is her message. I am so really delighted to know that His Royal Highness Prince Charles is visiting you today to lay a wreath at the wonderful Copp Memorial. He was such a great help in achieving. I'm very sorry not to be present myself, but I do send everybody my best wishes and congratulations. As usual, Mum summed it up beautifully. Thank you to Robin Walton, to Mike Beale, and to the very many hard-working people in this community of Hayling Island that hosted these men in the hardest days of their lives and helped them make it possible for us to live in freedom and prosperity. D-Day, may they never be forgotten. Your Royal Highness, when you're ready, Major Pilcher has a wreath for you today, sir. Thank you for coming here today and honouring these men.
I'm now going to introduce Jim Booth, one of our Coppist veterans, and he'll lay a wreath on their behalf. Come on, Jim. We have very great pleasure in introducing the choir of Hayling College, who will sing an anthem to the wreath laying.
Poppy flowing in the breeze, please don't forget to remember me. Remember those who stood beside me. You will always be in my dreams. You will always be in my dreams. You will always be.
Didn't it go well?
I'll add my congratulations as well.
That's very kind of you, sir. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much indeed. It really is. It was, and he did beautifully.
Lovely touch that he has, and it's just, just the right combination of formality and informality. I just love it. And that reflects on this community, but also on Robin Moulton's community. But thank you for having acted as the drop of oil on.